Hi guys, welcome to Independent Study Consumers Math. You're going to go ahead and you're going to find all your information and videos that I will upload into your Google Classroom, and I will also upload the notes here, so if you have a hard time seeing them on the computer, you'll be able to look at them and print them off in the lab there if you need to, and follow along with the video here. Whenever you get stuck on problems, please find me. You can visit me in my room at the end of the class periods, or find me before, after school, or during lunchtime, okay? Don't let yourself get behind. In the first couple chapters of Consumers Math, you're going to notice that it is a lot of review of stuff you learned in middle school and in algebra. We need to make sure you've got a firm foundation of your math before we start getting into the actual parts of running an everyday life. For those that said I will never use math once I'm out of high school, out of math class, you're wrong. We're going to use it. So we're going to review the skills that you need to help you out through this class in the first couple chapters. Okay, so we're dealing with section 1.1 now, and this is your rates, ratio, and proportions. You had this with me in 7th grade many years ago, okay? So this is just a review here. So ratios, okay? Ratios is a comparison of two quantities, okay? And we compare them by division. Okay, our most common way that we see a ratio is in a fraction form. Okay, so let's say we have a ratio and we're comparing A to B. Okay, so these would be representing two numbers. We could even say we have numbers 3 to 4. Okay, so we could write a ratio in this form, like you can see in your notes here. We can also write a ratio with a colon here, A to B, or if we're using numbers, we would say 3 to 4. So we're comparing the two numbers, 3 to 4. But the most common way we tend to see ratio set up is in the fraction form, where we put it as a fraction, 3 to 4. Okay, when we deal with ratios in fraction form, we always need to reduce our ratio to the lowest form, but we are never going to turn this into a mixed number. So we always reduce the fraction, okay, but never turn to a mixed number. Never turn to a mixed number. Okay, that's important as we work through ratios. As you do your homework assignments, you're going to need to reduce a number of your ratios. But always, let's say we have the fraction, we're comparing 8 to 6. Okay, go ahead. It's easy to think of as turning it as a fraction. We're going to reduce it. We know that 2 goes into both of these. So reduce it down, which turns my ratio now into 4 over 3. We're going to leave that in that form. Never turn it into 1 1/3. Never do that. We're going to leave this as our answer when we work with ratios. Okay, so that's a little background on ratios. Remember, we have a special type of ratio, and that is called a rate. And a rate is simply a ratio that compares two quantities with different units. And we actually deal with rates all the time. You guys are driving now, and so one that you see every day is miles per hour, okay? Here in Michigan, you go 55 miles per hour. If you're on the backcountry roads, nothing higher than that. That is a rate, okay? You're dealing with two quantities, miles and hours, and we're comparing them. Another one would be revolutions per minute. So we're studying how many times a wheel rotates at a certain speed, okay? Revolutions per minute. Another would be heartbeats. How many heartbeats do you have in a minute? Okay, those are rates. They're comparing two quantities just with two different units. Okay, all rates are ratios. Okay, it's a special type of ratio. With rates, we always want our denominator to be 1. Okay, we're comparing, and that's called a unit rate. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and practice here, and we're going to look at this example here. We're just simply study in ratios. It's not asking us rates or anything. They're asking us to give a ratio of pines to spruce. And up here in our example, it says we have a landscaping company planting 100 pine trees and 75 spruce trees. So they want us to compare these two quantities, just simply putting it in a ratio with pines to spruce. The number or the item that always comes first, it will always go in our numerator, okay? So here they give us pines. So we're going to go ahead and put our pine trees as 100, and that's going to go in our numerator. Then what comes second goes in our denominator, and so our spruce trees are 75. Now, right there is our ratio, but remember with ratios, we always have to reduce it. So what goes into both of those? That would be 25. So we reduce it down, and our final fraction is 4:3. Remember, we never turn it to a mixed number. Right there is our ratio for pines to spruce. For this next example, they're asking us now to switch it around. How about spruce to pines? So because spruce came first, that goes in our numerator. Pines came last, and so that goes in our denominator. We reduce that down by 25, and this time we get our ratio of 3:4. Now be careful, when in your examples, they might ask you to combine numbers. Here in this last example, they want us to study pines to all trees. So our first number is going to be just simply our pine trees, which is 75. And then we have to go ahead and add our trees that they gave us because they want to know all trees. So we're going to add 175 to get our total of 175. Can I reduce that fraction? Yeah, I can. Okay, so I'm going to reduce it again by 25. And my reduced ratio is going to be 3 and 7 in the bottom. Okay. So that's working with ratios with the information they give us. Always remember what they give us first goes in the numerator. The second thing goes in the denominator. Okay, let's go ahead and let's look at rates and practice some with rates here. Okay, we've got two examples. Our first example says the rate in miles per gallon is what they want us to look for of a car that travels 400 miles on 18 gallons of gas. Okay, now watch it. What was the rate they were doing? They wanted miles, so miles have to go on the top with gallons on the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to look at our story problem, and they gave us 400 miles and out of 18 gallons. Okay, that is a rate. Now they want us to find out how many. We're looking basically for a unit rate. We're trying to find how many miles can we go in on 1 gallon of gas. So to do that, I need to turn my denominator into a 1. And how do I do that? I divide it by itself. So basically, really, I'm taking the top and I'm dividing it by the bottom. So when I go ahead and take 400 divided by 18, I'm going to go ahead and please use your calculators, guys. Help yourself out. I've got a calculator over here that I figure, and I end up with, I round it, and I get 22.3. Okay, now we got to go ahead and tell the reader what is this rate. And remember, my rate that I was looking for was miles. Slash is abbreviation for per, and then we have gallon. Okay, so right there is my unit rate. So for every gallon I use in my car, I'm going to get 22.3 miles out of that. Okay, let's go ahead and look at example B. Example B says we have a 20-pound bag of fertilizer, and we know that it should cover 5,000 square feet. They want to find how much coverage can I get for every pound from that bag. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I need to go ahead and put my square feet in the numerator. Okay, and that is the area that this bag covers, and I know my 20-pound bag covers, whoops, try that again. How about my 20-pound bag, that's a 20 there, gives me 5,000 square feet. But I want to know how much 1 pound does. So I'm going to go ahead and divide the top by the bottom. Okay, and so I'm going to take 5,000 divided by 20, and I end up getting 250. Okay, and then I need to go ahead and use my symbols to tell the reader what I have. And so for 1 pound, I end up with 250 square feet covered. Okay, so we had to find how much by dividing the top by the bottom. It gives us 1 unit, and that is what we call a unit rate. Okay, so that's a review of our rates and ratios. Let's take a look at proportions here. Okay, proportions are simply making an equation using 2 ratios. And these ratios we're saying are equal because there is an equal sign. So a proportion is simply an equation that states 2 rates are equal. Now, when I have this example right here, how on earth would I tell a person what that means? And it's simply saying that A is to B, so I'm comparing A and B, as, and that's what my equal sign is C is to D. So that is what that means in word terms, okay? Now, remember, way back in middle school, we talked about extremes and means. That is what occurs with proportions. Our A and D on a diagonal here, sometimes you used what was called the butterfly effect in elementary. This A and D are called our extremes, and with proportions, our extremes have to equal the means. Okay, and that's where they get the butterfly because it looks like a butterfly. But all it's saying is that this ratio equals this ratio. And for it to truly be a proportion, my A times D has to equal my B times C. If they aren't equal to each other, then those items are not proportion. They're not proportional and they're not equal, okay? Now, this is a rule that always occurs. And what's nice with this, because with proportions, we know means equals extremes, we can use this to help us find missing information. And you were doing this a lot of times with me in middle school here. So here we have a simple proportion. We've got 5/7 equals x over 100. I want to find that missing information. Well, proportion says, remember, my means equals my extremes. So I'm just going to go ahead and cross multiply. I'm going to go 5 times 100 has to equal my 7 times my missing variable, which is x. Here I have an equation that I know how to solve. 5 times 100 is 500. 7 times x gives me 7x. How do I find x? Well, I got to get it isolated, so I'm going to divide both sides by 7. And that leaves me x, and 500 divided by 7 is roughly, once I round it, is 71.4. Okay, and that allows me to find my missing variable. Okay, so proportions, using the rule that each means equals extremes, we can go ahead and find missing information. Let's go ahead and let's do a word problem here. Okay, because not everything in life is going to be a nice equation. You're going to have to be responsible for taking all this information and putting it into an equation to help you find missing information. So here we have the example. The ratio of female to male employees in a large department store is 8:3. If this holds for the entire mall and there are 600 women workers, how many men workers are in the mall? Okay, there's a lot of information, but we're going to go back and look at it. How did they give me the ratio? The ratio they gave me was females to males. Okay, we need to make sure when we set up our proportions that we keep it in the same order. So I have one proportion, and then I'm going to have another proportion. And I have to make sure that in this case, my females are both on top along with my males. Don't switch it, okay? If you need to, go ahead and use symbols like I did here for F and M so that you don't goof up your proportion, because that will definitely give you the wrong answer. So let's go back to our story problem here. It says the ratio of female to male employees in a large department store is 8:3. So my 8 represents my females, because that is what they gave me first. And then my male employees are going to be 3. Okay, now continue on. It says, if this holds for the entire mall and there are 600 women or female workers, how many men? So where do I put this 600? Well, those are my females. So that has to go up on top. So my missing information here is my males. Okay, now that I have my proportion set up, now I'm just going to go ahead and do my cross multiplying. So I'm going to go 8 times x gives me 8x, and it has to be equal to 3 times 600. 3 times 600 gives me 1800. Okay, now I'm just going to solve for x. And when I do that, I am going to end up with about 225 men. Okay, and using that, we can go ahead and find the missing information in a story problem. So when you do this, always make sure, if you need to, use symbols to help you keep your proportions in the right order. And your homework assignment is going to be in Google Classroom. So go ahead and do your practice of your work through that. If you get stuck, have any questions, come find me in the classroom. Have a great day, guys.